Hey guys, it's Carlos from Immortals Inc. Podcast. Welcome back. I have with me Mikey, as always.
What's up?
And today we brought back Travis.
What's
because
up, Travis?
We have something epic to talk about. It's not epic, it's just fun.
We're
gonna try to give Mikey a coronary for the editing process of this.
Yeah. Always.
We're here to talk about a little thing called Carcosa.
From
Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Right?
Yeah,
Same company.
Can't leave that out.
Can't leave that part out. That's the exciting part. But we brought Travis in here because I haven't read it yet. I know. Here's how I know this book. It's because of Lamentations, but I've never read it yet. And I knew it was pricey when it was they only had like a first printing or something like that. I knew they were going for a lot of money on the aftermarket. I'm like, what is this book about? And I'm like, okay. But it was I didn't know enough about it, and the price was high. So I'm like, well, it's got to be something good. And I didn't want to take a chance on not knowing what it was. But go ahead and tell us, if you don't mind.
So Carcosa is actually a thing that was somewhat inspired by a book called, a series of short stories by William Chambers called The King in Yellow.
Oh, yeah.
Cthulhu.
Carcosa is mentioned.
Okay, duh.
Right.
I knew it was.
And there's like a poem. There's one of the poems from The King in Yellow where he mentions Carcosa.
Carcosa, yeah.
So really what this is this sort of a mixture of science fantasy, horror, sort of Cthulhu stuff. It's got dinosaurs, psychic powers, all kinds of things. And it has a very simple, basic sort of D6 based, early D&D based system to it.
Like a D6 system?
Well, like all your hit points are D6, your damage is all D6, and you use D20 for
written so
hit.
Written so you didn't need extras.
Right, yeah. So it's very, very super simple system. So it's actually its own rule system. It doesn't use the LOTFP rule set, although you could if you wanted to. So it has its own rule set built into it, and it is.
Oh, so it's self-contained?
Yes, it's self-contained.
Perfect.
And it's a hex crawl, which if some of your viewers may not be aware of what that is because it's not something that they put out very much these days. It's a map with every bit of it broken into a hex with a hex grid, and there's a number on each hex, and you go into the book and look at that hex, and whatever's there is what the characters find in that hex.
Sort of like Forbidden Lands was a hex.
Yeah, a little bit like that.
Forbidden Lands or Mutant Year Zero.
Yep.
Yeah, stuff like that. Where you can. It's less work on the DM.
It is,
and you can have a bigger world, and you kind of build your own world as you go.
I mean, it's an open
kind of a cool concept.
It's an open world sandbox world kind of game or really campaign setting.
If you could imagine like a video game and you're in an open world and you hit a checkpoint or you hit an adventure, right? That's
exactly.
kind of what it is like.
Yep.
But in role playing form.
Yep, exactly. And so the game has the setting has doesn't use the standard fantasy races. It's all humans, but they're all different like colors. And by colors I mean like purple, orange, yellow, and then there's a bunch of colors that are named differently, that are just made up words. They're like, well, it's kind of blue, but a little more green than blue, kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
So your characters are all basically fighters. I think all of them, it's been a while since I've read it, I think all of them have a psionic ability, which you actually roll every session to see what one you have and how many times you can use it. There's a lot of randomness in the thing. And then there's, so it's just this bizarro, weird.
Do the different colors give you different benefits?
Sometimes, but they're also tied into some of the magic. So
okay.
there are rituals in addition to normal spell casting. That's typical for like the fancy and style of spell casting. If you memorize a certain number of spells and can cast that many spells a day, kind of thing. There are rituals which you have to travel to specific hexes in the game to perform the ritual, and you have to take a jail man and sacrifice him while you're there, that sort of thing.
Just pretty casual.
Yeah, I mean,
Not much.
It's definitely a mature audience kind of game.
So family night. No,
Yeah,
no, not family night.
But it's also kind of surreal, and it's kind of a surreal kind of game too, where you have dinosaurs. The old gods from the sort of Cthulhu mythos are present on the world and active. So you might run across a Shoggoth or something like that as you're running around on your dinosaur, shooting your laser gun that you liberated out of these ruins. And so it gets pretty weird and wild. It's a very emergent, and it's an emergent gameplay kind of setup. It's not intended to be a thing where it's plotted. It's your characters start in a spot and things happen. There are some plotted adventures. I think Jeff McKinney wrote for that.
So you mean like, and if I'm understanding right, you just kind of go and whatever happens,
right?
And you just build your story as you go with the game master and the rest of the players.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a lot of it. It's very much an exploration.
So each hex would have something happen onto it. So like, and you don't have to, it's not linear, obviously. So you just go straight out, or you can go cut right, cut left, and and then you'll create different stories with it based on what happens in the book. Whatever and then the hexes are just, they're just whatever on that hex is there. So that's a lot easier on a DM, I think, and that's a lot more creative.
It certainly can be a lot less prep, especially since he's done a lot of the work in there for you. And I think this one is better for a GM that has a lot of improv sort of comfort with improvisation, because the entries, the hex crawl or the hex entries are not big long paragraphs of text. They're like, there's this monster here, or there's a camp with these kind of guys here. Here's their stat blocks. Go. Right.
Yeah. See, I kind of like those myself. Like, I don't like the long drawn out. I shouldn't say long drawn out, but like some guys write out adventures and they have whole stories and what's going to go on, and they're deep and they're into it. And it's like, and then I can't do that. I like, well, what do you got? And you just make it up, and that's how, like, almost humor, or, like it's just, to me, it's easier for that on the fly.
Yes.
And then you just make it up. I mean, you kind of have to have like an active imagination.
Yeah.
I mean, some guys are good DMs and don't have any imagination, which is a weird thing to say, but they don't, or some guys are terrible DMs and they have good imagination, just have no bookkeeping skills. But this would probably help them with the bookkeeping,
especially because it's very simple. Mm-hmm. The system is very, very simple. You don't need to have a massive grasp on the mechanisms of the game, because there aren't that many. It's very much a improvisational game setting system with a solid framework and a sort of solid feeling, or I guess motif and theme behind it that you could easily riff off of once you grasp what it's about.
And then the world itself is just whatever.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Because it is a Lamentations product.
Yes.
And he does horror and survival horror and body horror and those sorts of things. And so there are slaves, there are ritual sacrifice of innocents, there are all kinds of awful things going on.
Terrible evil things
going on. And sometimes in order to survive, you have to do some terrible evil things. Because he provides, some of the ritual spells are to banish an old god. Right, so there's these banishment spells, but they require require some even not so pleasant things that you have to do.
What's the cost?
Even in Call of Cthulhu, it's like either go insane or somebody dies,
right.
It is. But I could see that, and it's just very. I mean, right on the cover, everybody, it says "Warning: Adults Only." Okay, so it's not a kids game.
No.
So,
but if you're into that sort of thing,
if you don't mind it, If you just don't mind,
is the ease of access, for the system, is that what made this one of the more popular books in the series, or is it
I think it's just because it's an interesting I think it's because it's an interesting setting, and it's, the people that there's some people that have run some long campaigns of it have said that it's just, they've had a really, really good time with it.
It just works
because it's weird.
Yeah.
It creates and
Just
the combination of things, and because it leaves so much space for the game master and the players to insert stuff into there, and they have to be creative with the way they solve problems and the way they deal with issues, that it just creates this really fascinating emergent sort of setting, and everybody's is a little different, and it's not a thing that you're going to end up repeating. You could play this multiple times with different groups, and it's going to be different every time.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not like your standard. You buy an adventure, you run it through. There's always that part that says players stop reading here.
Yes.
That's not the case with this then. No, it's
not so much.
Yeah.
No.
So yeah, because like a lot of, like, you'll have adventures like, oh, I ran through that already, or I DM'd that, I can't play it. But if you DM this, if somebody else does it, and if it's a random, as you go, then no, it's you can still run it and have a good time at it.
Yeah.
True.
Exactly.
How many hex points are there that give a basic bullet line
Hundreds.
description? So that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, and then the combination of them, I'm sure it's.
I personally like that aspect of the improv and all that, because that's what I would do too.
Because that's not a lot of record keeping. A lot of people like some guys are nuts about the record keeping.
Yep.
They what's your encumbrance? You have 20 gold pieces. You can only carry 10 more before. I ain't got time for all that, and that's fine if that's the kind of game you like. But me personally, I like the fast and loose, and
Yes.
let's go and tell a story, have some fun, and laugh about it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's what I like. I mean,
Yeah, and if you like sort of transgressive humor, if you're like Lock, Stock, and and Two Smoking Barrels,
Yeah,
or you like those sorts of like, oh, I can't believe we did this that's hilarious kind of thing.
that guy died.
Yeah,
We sacrificed that innocent guy. Isn't that hilarious?
Or, we've been, but that sounds. I know this first drew my attention when I wasn't even like, because I'm a collector of role playing books and things, and I saw this pop up and it was really pricey. I'm like, well, I got to buy it. For whatever reason, I have no idea what it is, but I'm like, well, no, I don't have to buy it because I want to find out. And I never did. And then you'd see the price fluctuate. It was high and then low and then high and then low. And I'm like, you were explaining to me that is because of the mature content.
Yes.
It had some issues with people and they only had one printing. So everybody wanted it. Then.
Yeah. So when this first came out, I think it was like 2011, 12, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It got a lot of discussion on the old school Renaissance blogs and message boards. There were people who were just absolutely, this shouldn't exist. This is terrible. This is exactly the sort of thing that the satanic panic people are gonna bring about, or are gonna come out of the woodwork for, and this is awful. And James has always been against censorship and doing and making things that are for the normies, so to speak. He's a guy with 1,000 CDs collection of all heavy metal, and a lot of it is not safe for work kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he stood up for Jeffrey McKinney when this came out, and he's been very consistent about that throughout the entire time that the company's existed.
Mm-hmm.
That not everything needs to be PG-13, sanitary for your protection kind of thing.
Which makes me laugh, because if you read any Call of Cthulhu book, and I'm not ragging on Call of Cthulhu or
right.
Chaosium, but their stuff is horrible. Not for PG or dinner time or family discuss. Their stuff is horrible, but it's understood that. But they never really go after them, which I never understood.
Right.
And it's like, well, I wouldn't want them to anyway, but I want it to be there. But somebody else comes along and they slap like, oh, you're going on a D&D adventure that's terrible. shouldn't say D&D. You're going on a fantasy adventure and it's terrible, and all of a sudden, oh God, you can't have that. And it's like, and then Satanic Panic. Do you know anything about that?
Heard of it.
All right. Well, we could probably talk
Is that
about
another podcast?
Maybe that's another episode.
Yeah, that's another thing. But yeah, that was a reaction when the D&D became popular, and it's probably a lot of misunderstanding.
I could talk about that a lot. If you want.
I could. Yeah. We'll schedule that. Pencil that in. But I'll have to read this because now I want it. Now I have it.
Yes.
I got a bunch of them too. Did you see I got a stack of?
Yes.
New shipment. Come in the store.
I just got a right from Finland.
Yes, right? Helsinki.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to him with email, and I ordered some stuff, so I got a pretty good spread of his products and his stuff. So it's pretty good. It's pretty funny. A lot of it I'll never review ever, but I will sell it to you. There's one in particular that we were all laughing about. I'm like, oh.
And we will continue to leave it in the dark.
Yeah,
until you come in store, see for yourself.
You want to buy it? It's cool. It made me laugh because it's funny. Wordplay is funny.
It's all creative,
but not on certain platforms. But yeah, would you suggest this? Obviously, not a beginner book.
It's probably not. But,
yeah, I was gonna say.
But I think
here's your introduction to fantasy role play. Human sacrifice. No. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're kind of into horror and sort of, Lord Dunsany and William Chambers and some of that stuff, that's probably fine.
Plus, I like it's a whole. I didn't know it was a whole system in this.
Yeah, it is. You don't need anything else.
Yeah, and we have it here at $37.95. So. That's not a bad price. It's under $40.
It's got really cool art in it. It's
all in one. So all in one for less than $40.
Yeah, it's a nicely presented book.
Are you able to show that hex on camera? Is it appropriate?
The hex. Yeah, I mean, right?
Yeah.
It's just a simple hex.
And I think you
map.
might be able to get a download of the map somewhere, but I'm not positive about that.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. It's not. It's not that thing. I wouldn't use, write it in the, I would never write in the book, but, it should be good. And, the book is nicely written. I always like the pages when they're not white and staring at you.
Yep.
They're like mellow, and there's a lot of good, nice artwork in here. Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. And then,
nothing. Oh, no. I thought I saw something. It's always classic. Oh, there's nothing bad in here. Whap, but no, I didn't really flip through. It's probably subject matter, like you said, that's mature. It's not as bad as some of the other stuff, but.
Good entry point right there.
Here? Entry?
I don't know what I'm talking about.
I know. Maybe. I don't know. I doubt.
Into the world of Lamentations, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what
if you're an RPG.
That's what I meant. Like,
okay,
you want to take baby steps.
You want to look at a LOTP, a Lamentations book. That's a pretty good one to start with.
Yeah, it's a good one to start because you have your own system and everything like that.
Yep.
It's a good start. But at least get your feet wet. All right, Travis, thanks for coming in.
You're welcome.
If you like what you see and you like what you heard, you can go ahead and give us a like, a subscribe, right? We'll have all the links in the
description.
And I guess we'll see you guys later.
Later, guys.